Howdy, everybody. Bob Tallman for No Spin Rodeo. No politics, no BS, just hard-hitting news and rodeo commentary from two of the most trusted sources in our sport. Kendra Santos, Tommy Joe, Lucia. Listen up. Here we go.
Well, hello, everybody. I know. You think we fell off the face of the earth, or we don't want to do this anymore. But welcome to episode 108. We're back. And as you can see, we're back old school style. We figured out that we're just going to do our stuff the way we do our stuff and hope that you guys like it and keep listening. Welcome the First Lady of Pro Rodeo Journalism and a real pro on site too, by the way. We'll talk about that later. Hello, Kendra Santos. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm doing very well. Thank you. And apologies, I got some wild hair stuff going here. Apologies. Courtesy of the Creston pool, but.
Well, aren't you supposed to put conditioner in after you take a pool jump?
Whatever. I'm good for a ponytail.
I've got conditioner in mine. Can you tell?
Lordy.
I've got conditioner. Well, I'll tell you what a whirlwind month. I don't know about you, but apologize to all of our listeners for not giving you guys anything. But July is brutal for Kendra and I. And so we've just collected a lot of memories and stuff over the last month. And we figured that in this episode, we would just share with you some of our experiences, what we've noticed, cover a little news right here in episode 108. And you know what? I do want to say this. I'm going to start topping the show with this. Thank God and God bless rodeo fans. You know, we wouldn't all be able to do what we do if it wasn't for the rodeo fans, which includes the committees, the contractors, the athletes, and all of you that are interested in rodeo, that buy tickets to rodeo. So God bless all of you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making our world go round and round. So Kendra, I'm just going to let you start. You want to kind of catch everybody up on where you've been and what you've done, and I'll raise my hand or throw in some comments along the way, and then I'll do the same, and we'll go from there. How does that sound?
Fair enough. My last couple of weeks, I'm actually home this week, but the couple weeks before that, I was in Salinas and then Salt Lake City, and probably about a 60-degree temperature swing, I'm guessing, since Salinas was in the 60s, and we all had our light jackets on. It was pretty amazing. So
Salt Lake was in its 105s.
Yes, but both were awesome. It's hard for me not to just really appreciate the old school traditions still alive at Salinas. And so, you know, the fact that it is the longest score line in a rodeo, the fact that it's the only 5-header we have in our sport in the team roping. Those are just really cool things. And what I know is, like, in my lifetime, rodeo committees were, when I was a kid, mostly, ranchers, including at Salinas, where, it was Chet Behan and Alan Wallace and people like that. And, as we go, a lot of those old ranchers, have gone on to the great cowboy reunion in the sky. And now, there are people from town running some of these rodeos. And so I don't think we should take sometimes very costly, literally, tradition holds that go. And I just, my cowboy friends are greatly appreciative of some of these things. And at Salinas, both team roping partners come from the left side of the steer. When I'm a kid, the bulldogger and the hazer came from both sides of the steer, by the way, and they have over time decided to put the hazer over on the right side now. But having those, let them out there and run them down, old school. Yes, things have changed. When I'm a kid, it's a much bigger, everybody thinks about the Salinas Arena being massive, but it was way, way, way bigger. And the grandstands on each end, lengthwise of the arena, weren't there. And it was made of painted green wooden boards. But some of the really great traditions of having an average and having that long score survive. And so we're very grateful for that. And it makes it unique, and that's cool.
Well, and I think it's a calling card, right? If you're a rodeo like Salinas, like Pendleton, and are able to do that, and it really separates you from the contestants' point of view, even from the fans' point of view. It's unique, it's interesting, it's entertaining, and it's great. It doesn't mean that it works for everybody, but it is hats off and a shout out. Keep it up. There's a handful of them that are able and willing to continue to do this. And it kind of brings up the conversation. It's interesting to me. So I've always advocated when I've had conversations with cowboys and athletes that, do you realize that the core of this sport, you guys enter and pay yourselves. And I've always said, the losers pay the winners. But what I'm starting to realize, especially in looking at all of the hullabaloo on Cheyenne, and we'll get into Cheyenne, about progressive and restricted entries like we do at Salt Lake. There's a lot of those cowboys, regional, and that are fine with paying the fees, and they're fine with not winning. They just want to go play there. And there's something to that, Kendra, that I never really, I was like, it's not fair. All of the prize money that the best saddle bronc rider wins is 40% the entry fees of all the guys that are barely making it in the back of the van. But maybe those guys in the back of the van that are barely making it are happy to pay that for a chance to win every now and then and just get to play with the big boys. So I think I have a little bit different perspective on that. I still think there ought to be enough money in the sport that you don't have to rely on heavy credit card bills, because I've heard you say, they go into the NFR, they're loaded on their credit cards. Well, part of that's because they're paying, they're paying the top 10 mortgage payment on their ranch. And maybe that's okay. You know what I'm saying? If they want to do that and that's what they want to do, God bless them.
Well, I think one of the big lies that came forth a number of years ago was the concept of limiting entries, and that all committees would who did that would more than compensate for the lesser entry fees, because those guys weren't helping fund the payoff. And in a number of cases, that has been a big lie, because that is not happened.
Well, that's not a lie. That's not. Yes, it's so I'll give you some personal history. We did Everybody Can Enter at Salt Lake. I don't even know how many years ago. And we had 1,400 or something in slack. And people were tying their horses up on pavement and slipping because they don't realize it's probably not good to get on your barrel horse on pay. All of these things, just dangerous. And when I went back to look at how much added money it would take to get there, that's a challenge, because there's a lot of donated money. And
but Skippy, I'm not coming for you. You're not an example of what I'm talking about. Well, I didn't say everybody who limited entries failed to compensate, but it has happened a number of times, and that is the complaint of the Cowboys, fairly enough.
And it was interesting to see. I read an article, a well-done article, that really pointed out in Cheyenne, and I don't remember the year, but the payoff was bigger when everybody was entering than it is now. And again, I'm slightly admitting here that I understand that. Now it still bugs me that the Cowboys are funding the Cowboys. Now, if they want to do that, and the Cowgirls are funding the Cowgirl, if they want to do that, that's great. And so be it. There's still, now I heard the borders opened, or, that steers are going to start flooding across the border. So our old friend at wherever he was from,
Miguel.
Miguel ought to start making money again. But the reality, the reality is, and this is a truth, that it is expensive, not just in prize money, but it is expensive to do outs. I don't care if it's a bucking horse, a great one. The other thing is we pay a lot of money for our stock, but you don't draw something, that you can't win on. Now, let me qualify that. When our eliminator pin was out, there was a lot of guys that turned out. It wasn't because they couldn't win. It was because they didn't think they could ride them. Sorry, guys. Don't want to hear that. Because the guys that got on went to the gold medal round, right? So don't give me that. You just don't want to get bucked off, or you don't think you can ride them. But you and I have seen calves take a hard left and the talented guys get a rope on them and place in the round. So just, don't take that out of the picture too, but it just cost a lot of money. Back to my initial point, Kendra, it costs a lot for every out. And the person that pays that is the committee. And that also adds into that equation, right? Not just, the prize money goes bigger. And so here's one, I'm going to pitch something out to you. I didn't know we were going to go down this, but what about this? Do you think that the contestants, if a rodeo were to say we're doing a giant qualifier event and the fees are $1,000, or I'm making that up. Let's say it cost $65 for the calf and staff and everything. But let's say that you charge the contestants exactly what it cost you. Does that make sense? So I took and I said, there's an event and it cost me for every cowboy X. But as long as you guys pay it and it doesn't come out of our pocket and consequently out of your prize money or your added money, do you think the contestants would prefer that?
Well, I guess it depends on the options and it depends on the details. If there were 1,000 people entered and you're going to take the top one, like some of those redemption rounds at various qualifying events, it just depends on the details of the ground rules, right?
Well, if I did it, I would take a bunch. Now, the flip side to that argument from a producer's standpoint is I didn't have him, but I want Stetson Wright, right? Correct, at our event. And so do my fans. They want to see in Utah Stetson. They want to see all the blue shirts. But, I think that if you had, for instance, let's just take our rodeo, for example. There's 40, 10 around. 40, if you had the top 10, you get all the big names. And then the other 30 qualify from an event that just doesn't cost the committee anything. So they don't have to pull it out of the prize money. Does that make sense? It doesn't cost them an arm and a leg to do that. If it was 30 and 10 for an event, do you think that would be fair?
But how are you going to do that in the rough stock?
Well, the roughs, you could open it up and say everybody that wants to enter can. You don't have to, because the truth is they're not that deep. I mean, you saw the bull riding the bull riders are split up. We'll talk about that later with the PBR teams. The bull riders are split up. I don't know that you have to do that in rough stock. I would probably just do it in timed events. I'm not saying Salt Lake's going to do this. I'm just asking about a premise. So if I were Cheyenne, what if in 3 months out, I just held a giant slack that didn't cost us anything, but put people into the rodeo. And I'm not even suggesting this for time, just a rodeo out there, right? You know what I'm saying, Kendra? Just a rodeo. You have this one big slack, and as long as it doesn't cost you a fortune, right? You provide the facilities and some staff. For our rodeo, if we spent 20 grand to do this or 15 grand, that's not going to kill us. But do you think that the contestants would prefer that?
Do I think timed eventers would go for that, or for whether it's Salt Lake City or Houston? or San Antonio, do I think they'd show up? Yes.
Well,
As long as the terms aren't just ridiculous, I think that yes, I shot at that. And I mean, hey, your gold medal round in the barrel race was a pretty fine howdy do, right? I'd never heard of Carrie Ann Cross, who won your gold medal. And the number one horse in the world right now, Piper, was silver. Okay. So there is something to be said for, every dog has his day. That's probably not a very nice way of putting it, but just, to use an old saying, it's just, that's why there used to be hundreds and hundreds of entries at Cheyenne. That's why Dean Finnerty, entered the bulldogging at Cheyenne for whatever it was, 30 some years or something when he had the chance. Because every now and again, Cole freaking Pugh on his permit won it this year. Now, mind you, a whole lot of the top 15 type bulldoggers did not go to Cheyenne this year. They opted out. But historically, in 1983, when this little punk Scott August Berry wins, Cheyenne and changes the whole course of his life. And
when in 17, when we did the trial events for our rodeo, we basically had events all over the country, and the PRCA board approved this, and we seeded people more like Olympics from all over. And by the way, that's when everybody heard Wyatt Denny's name, right? Like going back, like, who's this guy? Look at this goofy little guy with a mustache, and he just smoked them, right? So I think I would love that. I think the chance for outsiders to come in, figuring out a way, for, and I say outsiders, but for, these truly talented people that to get a shot. And we, with Days of 47 in the WPRA, we had some barrel racings that the number ones could get in. And by the way, that was a fight, right? It's funny because if you say, oh, we're going to let these people in, well, then the top 40 are like, oh, no, it's just us. We earned our right to be in the top 40, so we should not be held out. Well, again, no matter what decision you make as a committee, you're going to step on somebody's personal agenda or toes. And
well, yes, and I think one of the things that's frustrating from the contestant side is when year to year the rules of the game change. Like this year, we're going to take this many from these standings, or if you finish in the top 8 or 10 in the final world standings, you're automatically going to get to whatever. I don't care if it's the American or Calgary or whatever it is. And then if the next year you have different rules, well, then, I mean, look at people who have had to sit out for injury, and all of a sudden they're having to requalify all over again, which is like a year-long process. Okay, now you got to try to get in the top 30 or 40 so you can get into the buildings. And that is the most irritating ringtone I've ever heard, but God bless
Sorry
America.
about that. I can hear
Anyway.
it. I can hear it. I meant to turn my phone off, but there you have it.
But so, there's all of this is like, well, it comes down to details.
It's because we've changed ours. You're trying to get better, and you'd adapt things. I love all of these people that are high critical of everything. I'll give you an example. I was highly critical of the public education system till I got on a school board. And when I actually understood what the school board is dealing with, I had some compassion for some of their decisions. It's interesting, and it's never going to change. That's the way it is. That's the way it is with employees and owners of companies, right? The employees say, why don't they just do that? They don't see it from the seat of the owner. It's the same thing in our sport, and this is never going to change. It'll always give us something to talk about. The committees are all of them, Kendra, are trying to do what's best for what they're in charge of. My job is to make money so we can give money. We're a 501c3. We want to give more money, right? And we have 5 days to do it. We would love a month to do it. We could give a lot more money. But it's just, a
Okay,
little bit
are
of
you, to clarify that, are you talking about giving more money to charity?
correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so the one thing that, that's wonderful, and nobody's against that. I've written about this so many times. Nobody's against, helping communities that support rodeos, helping the youth, especially, which you guys are great at. That's so awesome. Um, I just, as long as people, which you do, remember to also give the cowboys and cowgirls a raise. And to your point about, wearing different hats in the rodeo industry, I just read a story that was a blast for the September issue of the Team Roping Journal about the rodeo, the PRCA rodeo, home of the Navajo PRCA rodeo in Window Rock, Arizona. Well, there are two women running that rodeo the last 3 years. Jamie Arviso, whose son James will be at the NFR for the first time this year, and Carol Holion. The the part that I teed off on that I thought was awesome was, okay, Jamie Arviso's brother, Derek Begay, and brother-in-law, Aaron Sinigini, world champion, and Eric Rogers, world champion, were volunteer labor listers at that rodeo. That is so cool to me. Those
Very
guys
cool.
stepped on the other side of the fence and learned, very eye-opening when you start making decisions
Absolutely.
based on,
Absolutely.
so that's why we all need to continue to work together, because nobody can have it just their way. And we need to rise. What is that about? Rising tides, raise all whatever, raise all ships, whatever it is. But it's like,
Well, that's so when the water goes into the cove, right? All of the ships that are in it go up.
yes.
Yes.
And that's where Mary Poppins here tried for decades to get the PBR and the PRCA to be friends and enjoy the rise together.
Oh, well, there you go. It's because everybody thinks they're smarter than the other person in everybody's seats. And it's because of where you're sitting, right? And you're rowing your own boat, and the river looks like it looks for you, right? And so I don't think it'll change, but I think continued discussions, right? If a light goes off in someone's head when they're driving down the road and they're like, well, that makes sense. I'm not going to get quite as irritated. Like, that makes sense. It's not good. It sucks for me. A good example was Tim O'Connell at our rodeo. He had a bad gait on a horse that is not a wreck. And the horse hung a foot, and he could have got seriously injured. Well, I knew Tim, and Tim, I've known him since he's a little boy. I knew he was pissed. And he looks over at me, and I said, after the show. And he waited, and we talked. And, I told him, I said, we made a change immediately. And I said, I think it would be justified for you to be mad at me if we had bad gaits all the way along, but we hadn't. I hadn't seen it yet, nor neither had nobody in my team, and we have a really good team there. We hadn't seen a problem till then, right? And probably had we left everything alone, probably wouldn't have had a problem for the rest of the rodeo. Tim nodded for his horse. The gentleman on the latch couldn't get it open, finally got it open, right? And then they slow gated him, which is the wrong thing to do. But if you put yourself in the situation of this particular person, I don't know that they knew what to do at that particular moment, right? Sling it, whatever. And the wrong decision was made. And at the end of the conversation with Tim, he understood that, he was fine, right? And then it turned out he was okay. I mean, I was worried that he was seriously injured, and it turned out that, he was hurt, but not injured. I tell my grandkids all the time, figure out if you're injured or hurt. So he,
okay. And, the two sides to every story situation. And I know your side. And I also talked at the time, before Tim even talked to you, at length with Tim. And what I would say in conclusion, A, thank God he wasn't seriously injured, because it could have been. B, this is another case where, people are human. I think he had some very fair, valid points. In summary, for me, knowing in pretty good detail the way both of you came at it, You both acted as absolute professionals in the situation. You listened. You immediately rectified the situation to the best of your ability. And he was a pro to come directly to you instead of bad mouthing you to others. He came directly to you and said, here's exactly what happened from my point of view. And here's exactly why this can't happen again. And you said, I hear you. And you took care of it immediately. And so I say, good for you both, because you were both men about it.
And nobody wants Tim O'Connell to win a gold medal more than me. Like, if I'm prejudiced, and he knows that. He knows I want him on the medal stand because Tim and I have known each other so long. And I love Tim and I love the O'Connell family. They're friends of mine from way, way, way back. And so I think what he realized is I was just as upset as he was. Like, both of us looked at each other during our opening ceremonies, and I looked at him like, go get it today. Right. So, I mean, there's emotion in that. And whether you're a producer or not, these are people that I care about. And of course I don't want it to happen. But at the end of the day, we both said it sucks, but it happens. And we just can't be negligent. Right.
When the shit got thin, you both were professionals and you both stepped up and were professionals. So good on you for that.
And he's winning. Like, he's winning. I think he won Dodge City. I mean, I want Tim, because Tim will admit, you know, a bareback rider's their body doesn't last very long. And Tim knows he's not at the beginning of his career, and he's got to be careful to stay physically healthy enough to reach his goals. And I understand that. And things like that don't help it. And he'll run across more along the way. And he knows that. But yeah, hats off to Tim. It breaks my heart that he didn't get on the medal platform, because he had the horse. He had the horse to do it. Like, everything was there. It was the right horse for him. You know, and that's what makes someone even more angry, even on the other end of the arena, right? When look at the team roping at our event, and I watch Anthony because Anthony's announcing. He's deep seated in the team roping world like you are. He's done it. He knows those guys. He's friends. And you just see the disappointment when it doesn't work out for these guys. But that's the unique thing of our sport. It's so hard to have everything work perfect every time. It's just hard.
While we're in Salt Lake City, I would love, and speaking of team ropers also, there was one evening, it was Saturday before the rodeo, and I had done a video clip with team roper Coleman Proctor, and then I realized that there was so much background noise, it wasn't that good. So I'm like, hey, redo. So he waves me into the Justin Sports Medicine room. Everybody talks about the Justin Sports Medicine all the time, whatever. But if people could see the visual of what I saw when I stepped into there, people have no idea they were, this is going to come out weird, but they were working on Coleman Proctor's groin, steer wrestler Tryson Callaway's pec from missing a steer somewhere a couple days before. He wasn't even up that night. They were helping him. There's Cole Franks rolling around on a ball doing positioning and things. He's had hip surgery like Shad Mayfield, who's trying to come back. I mean, they're helping people who aren't even up that day. And there's guys in there that are lined up, and they're like, it's like triage. Like, okay, this guy's up in the bareback riding, so they have 3 or 4 tables, and they're like, okay, we got to put him first because he's in the second event. And it was insane, but no one was turned away. And if you need to have ice on your shoulder while you sit over here and wait your turn, okay. Anyway, that Justin Sports Medicine provides a priceless gift to these guys.
Yeah, and nobody gets it. You can't really show video of that, but every day, that room of ours, for instance, and we know it's that way all over, is just packed full. And the Justin team, of primary doctors and trainers that they send out that the Justin Sports Medicine team manages are pros. They're easy to get along with. They're often, we make an effort, and I think more rodeos should, to not think of them as a pain. They're not a pain. Get them facilities where they can work on people. Get them the monitor so they can see the action. Get them good paramedics that can help them, because just what you said, amen to you. Thank God for the Justin Sports Medicine team and what they do for a whole year. Like, they don't get near enough credit. They don't.
It's wild. And people don't think that a team roper would be in there to work on his groin or his back. But there was Coleman Proctor. And these guys are so grateful, because that was, this is the same guy that's going to get in his truck and drive all night long to get to Cheyenne the next day.
Well, thank God for all the new sponsors. There's no doubt that it's wonderful that we have a lot of boots in the game and a lot of jeans in the game. But these legacy brands, we can't forget these legacy brands like Wrangler and Justin. These are brands that have supported rodeo. And look at the sports medicine deal. How many boots do you think that they sell off of that? They do it because they're giving back to the lifestyle that supports their business. And Wrangler does this in so many ways. I mean, with our Utah Cowgirl Collective, I said I want Wrangler and Justin. And the reason is because they're legacy brands. That doesn't mean that Cinch isn't fantastic. Cinch does amazing things in our sport. There are other boots that do amazing things. This is not downplaying what everybody's contributing, but let us not forget how long Justin and Wrangler have been supporting the rodeo cowboys and the rodeos, because they're the real deal.
Right. And I do remember in my first part of my career working in the PRCA office in Colorado Springs, there was literally a period of time where there were lawsuits and different things. Without Wrangler, the doors literally would have shut on the Hall of Fame and the PRCA, period. So, yes. And while we're talking about injuries and stuff, I think we can't move along without mentioning these major, Stetson Wright being out, Rocker Steiner being out, Wasey Shella being out. And today is August 4th. Tomorrow, our reigning world champion steer wrestler Tucker Allen is having major reconstruction surgery on his left knee in Dallas, courtesy of our friend Tandy Freeman, out for the rest of the season. The complexion of some of these races is major league impacted by these huge, outages, which apparently Stetson, my understanding, he's going to be right back. But okay, Bradley Miller he won your gold medal in Salt Lake City the other day. He's got like a 60 grand lead in the bareback riding. Okay, but what's he just done? With Stetson out, he's been getting on bulls to throw his name in the all-around race. And this is like, for me, having decades behind me, I'm like, well, if this isn't, remember the little era in the late 90s where Ty Murray, it was like, my phone was just, I was on speed dial, and he'd be like, toots, toots, toots. And it was one knee, one shoulder, the other knee, the other shoulder, like he's out. And then also on speed dial at the same time is like Joe Beaver and Fred Whitfield going, is it true? Is it true? Is it true? Ties out for the rest of the year. And all of a sudden, they're all entering another event. Well, anyway, let me guess that Bradley Miller, coming from Sam Houston State coach Bubba Miller raised, let me guess without looking that Bradley Miller worked multiple events in college for team points, right? And so what's he done? He's gone to J.B. Mooney's Bucktown, where Kai Hamilton's hanging out and everything else. And so.
Yeah, but you gotta, yes, hats off. I think it's that what you're bringing up is really cool. These guys looking at doing this, but from a businessman's perspective, okay? I think if I were on the timed event end, yeah, I would jump into other stuff. But I just have a hard time from a businessman's perspective thinking that it's smart to get on a bull when you're going to go to the NFR in the bareback riding. Sorry, but it just seems like there's so many recipes for more injuries on the rough stock end. There is.
Well, okay, this is the fundamental math on it though. Stetson's got 310,000 in the all around, and Bradley has 240. He's only 70,000 behind in the bareback riding. These guys are weighing this stuff out every single day.
Yeah,
this is a perfect segue. Okay, we're talking about a couple of go-arounds. What's a gold all-around buckle worth if something were to happen like it did to Stetson a couple of years ago with his hamstring? What if he tries to come back and his shoulder says, nah, not quite yet?
Or you get to the NFR, if he were to qualify and you get to the NFR. But with Stetson qualifying in 2 events, I mean, I think that's the key. I think you need to be qualified in 2 events if you think you're going to get anywhere close to Stetson at the end of the day. Unless,
for some reason, God forbid, Stetson can't be with us in Las Vegas. Well, I mean, I hope that doesn't happen.
I agree. I'm not so sure it's smart to get on a bull.
I understand.
I'm just saying.
I do.
Okay. He's a great bareback rider, but hey, hats off, because I love that there's still some cowboy grit left. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not, because I respect cowboy grit and this. I'm taking the re-ride attitude. I've always had respect. I don't always agree with it. I've been there like, no, don't take I didn't come here to get second. Okay.
Well, hey, Pa Kettle, you have to admit with me that Bradley Miller rolling like he is in the bareback riding and being way out in the lead, getting on bulls, is big brass balls, right? You have
absolutely.
Okay. Where does the weight go between big brass balls and Pa Kettle saying, okay,
maybe you just need to make sure that you have just as much brass, but between your ears as you do between your legs. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, but look where he's going for a leg up or a little refresher.
I'm just saying
he's going to Bucktown, and he's going to JB Mooney and Kai Hamilton, who are kings of big brass balls, and we're going to smoke indoors if we want to, and we're not going to wear helmets and whatever. And you can call them stupid if you want.
I didn't
call them gangsters. I don't know. Whatever.
I did not call them stupid. I'm just okay. Fine. Again, it's a free country. Do whatever you want. I'm just saying. I'm just reminding people to really calculate this stuff.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you for teeing it up for me, and I'm not saying that you're wrong, by the way. I'm just saying, there's the 2 sides to every story. This is a perfect segue into, let's talk about John Crimber. Let's talk about John Crimber, who just won $1 million in the PBR and is doing the all-night drives in the Capri camper because he wants to be the first guy to ever win the world in the PBR and the PRCA the same year. Is that stupid, Skippy? Because a lot of people would say, holy shit, what are you doing?
Well, I guess the only difference is he's the best bull rider in the nation, he's not learning to ride bareback horses. Yes, I think, but he's going after, something that's never been done. That's one thing, right? That's a different thing. He has the talent to do it. He does. I mean, it's interesting to me. It's a good thing his dad's the coach, but his injury isn't helping their team right now at all. If you watch the team's event, his groin, it's so I think it's fantastic. Okay. I loved seeing him on the back of our chutes, and nobody could have rode his short go bull. Nobody would have rode that bull. I didn't particularly love him in the draw, frankly, because I would have liked to seen Crimber ride, because he can ride almost anything. So I agree. I think that's what makes our sport different. right? That these guys, and I think there's probably a part of Crimmer that's like, I want to know what it's like to be sitting there sweating and eating a corn dog in the back of a van, and it's going to make him a better bull rider, because the rest of the little punks that are flying in there and staying in the Marriott and going and doing their 15 push-ups and then watching their PowerPoint on what they should eat and never having rodeoed, this is going to make Crimmer a better bull rider, period.
Well, and remember too, what he's told me in Salt Lake City, I'm like, why? And he said, I want to do this because my dad is my ultimate hero. And he not only went to the NFR, but he won the NFR. And Paulo Crimmer is John's hero. And so that's part of his why also. So,
cool.
Interesting.
And
that's cool. Yeah. And so, there's so many different ways to go. It's hard for me to leave Salt Lake City. There's so many things that happen there. Well, I guess while we're talking about injuries, I would say something. Let's talk about the other end of the arena. Let's talk about Shad Mayfield. So, everybody knows he has 2 hip surgeries, and then he's trying to, pull a Codiol. And how fun for me right now when Codiol is texting me like, what he just told Shad, and here, Shad's been doing some winning, and can he come back at Reno and make the finals? And hey, if he's got a chip in a chair in Vegas, never count him out. Everybody knows that. And something that happened Sunday night, a couple days ago, was tough. I know we're bouncing all over the place, but it was tough to watch. Maybe more than anything as a rodeo mom, because he was high man back in the short run at Dodge City. And, a human error was made, and the short run calves were 100 miles away when the short run happened. Okay. You heard about that or not?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's too bad. And I'm not here to just. I don't know
how that happens. Like, I can't wrap my head around how that went down. I understand one thing. I don't. I'm sorry. I'd have to do a little more digging. I don't. So for non-rodeo fans, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're way more in tune with the timed event end. But for instance, at our rodeo, they rope all of the cattle, and then our John Gwatney, who did a really good job for us, he works. They pick the short go cattle, right? And those get pulled off, and that's the short go cattle, right? And so I don't know how
historically the short go cattle are brought back by the guys who make the short run. In other words, they
Correct.
tend to be the best end of the herd.
Correct.
Okay.
And I just don't know how someone, right? I wasn't there, and I'm not throwing any daggers at anybody, but how someone these guys catch everything. How someone can't look at that pen of cattle, or how someone, well, and maybe they did. I haven't done enough research on this. That's terrible. It's terrible. So what,
what Shad Mayfield posted in a public comment was that basically what happened is they drew out of the wrong can of chips with the
so was his calf terrible?
Yeah, he was eliminated. He was high back. And so I understand, the 2 sides to every story. People are people, and people are human, and mistakes happen. Apparently, according to what Shad explained publicly, was that by the time anyone realized the error, the short run calves were 100 miles away. So, it's too bad nobody's going to disagree with, everybody wants the best man to win. And none of us is ever going to know what would have happened if the right calves had been there. But if you're Shad Mayfield and you're trying to pull a rabbit out of the hat, Cody Old style, coming back halfway through the season, spotting the field like that, and you've been on a roll and you're high man back, everybody understands and
It's no different than Tim's deal. It's no different than Tim's deal. But, now that I'm thinking about it, I can see how the stock contractors and the showrunners, they don't pay near the attention to the cattle that the ropers do. They know them by their twitch in their eye, which one's the good one. And I can see them just sorting off cattle, assuming that was the good pin. and sending the others away, not knowing the difference. So I can see, because earlier I said I don't see how this happens. Actually, I can see how it could happen.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. And also for the tiny event, and there were a couple things that still stand out to me about that week of Salt Lake, and some other great rodeos also. One was that on Saturday night, Utah, Caps Rob won his second gold medal at the Daisy 47, which was, super cool in front of his home state crowd. And at the same time in Lincoln, Nebraska, it also in steer wrestling, the Austin brothers, Ace and Burke, went 1-2 in not only the steer wrestling, but the all around at the high school finals. That was a really special night for Utah. And so I just, worth a mention. Congratulations to the Utah steer wrestlers. Utah has it going on with steer wrestling, which, everybody's like, why? But also this year, Cash's little brother Cruz is the national shoot dogging junior high champ. So there's a lot brewing there, but that was a very special night. And in the same 24-hour period, there was something that happened that I think people really related to, just as, on the human interest side of rodeo, that, what was it, Friday night before the rodeo, I was out near a parking lot in Salt Lake City and talked for a minute to Derek Begay and Coulter Todd, and they were pretty, sad. And those guys don't say much ever, but, things hadn't been really rolling, but the sad part was their dad hearts being, drawn away from the rodeo trail. And to their credit, they sucked it up. They roped. They were 4-5 that night in the perf on their second steer at Salt Lake. And then they went to, head for the all night drive, and they made it 4 blocks away from the rodeo grounds there in Salt Lake City. And they looked at each other. They're best friends besides being roping partners. And they're like, no. And they turned around and they went back to the rodeo grounds, and Coulter flew out the next morning to Lincoln to watch his boys, Traven and Coulter Lee, rope in the short round together. They were third high call. They ended up winning it. He got to be there for that. They didn't make it to Deadwood, but he got to be there for that. And by the same token, Big A flew home and was there Monday morning for his daughter Brindle's 7th birthday. And so that's cool. I mean, when people look at those guys and hang on their every word because they don't say very many words and think that they're so cool, and look at Coulter, he doesn't have any patches on his shirt. Why? Because he's like, well, because this isn't how I get my living. His heart is home with his family on the ranch. That's the way. But this is how they are and who they are when nobody's looking. And I just think pretty cool. I mean, those guys, if there is such a thing as gangster cowboys, it'd be those two, and they're going to say the least about it. So good for those guys.
Anybody that puts family first is number one in my book. And it's hard because it's a balance. You're trying to, you're trying to reach your goals and keep family first. So that is a super cool story. Super cool story. Well, we talked about Salt Lake. Let's talk about Cheyenne. We kind of talked about it a little bit. I'll just start out with something a little bit lighthearted. I don't know what everybody else thought, but there were a lot of 90-point rides. I mean, a lot of 90-point rides. And I'm looking at our event and watching the rides to see. And so there's been some comments about the judges at Cheyenne. Of course, the judges come up everywhere. We at our rodeo, I thought we had a good sound set of judges. There was some variance there. There was stuff I didn't agree with there at our rodeo, and that's normal. And I can deal with that. They're the judges. They saw it their way. What I haven't heard about Cheyenne, and I did a little bit of texting to the people, and that is, at the end of the day, folks, back off. If they inflated the scores a little bit, back off, as long as the right guys took home checks, right? And if the right guys took home checks, then don't sweat it. Don't worry about it. That's my take on that, on Cheyenne. Have you heard anything about what sideline reporting do you have from Cheyenne?
Well, I wasn't there.
Well, I
We
mean,
all know.
you don't have to be there. You're kind of like Game of Thrones, right? If you've got all your little, you're the whisperer. You've got all your little spies everywhere. So don't give me this. Oh, I wasn't there. Don't give me that. You've got
Well,
something from
okay,
Cheyenne.
I'll admit this. Part of why I wasn't there is because there was no Slack. Okay. Sometimes we have to agree to disagree.
So see, Cheyenne,
So
that's what it feels like to get the stiletto. Okay, go ahead.
anyway, there's a lot of it felt on some days like they couldn't buy a break. I'm just gonna say that most of my cowboy friends do not appreciate the new format. Some of them, including event director Shane Hanchey, has publicly said it will change. Watch. That's a direct quote. So I don't know because I haven't been in those boardrooms. I don't know what the future holds there. I did feel like there were some things that happened. There was pure chaos that we could all see and hear from afar. And then, oh my Lord, then, it goes viral, a barrel horse flat slap in the ground, right? And there was some tough stuff that happened. So
Yeah, well, and I you can't always. So I will say that Cheyenne actually in the last couple years, they've been slow moving. This year more, they paid way more attention to their ground because I know who they had in there in advance. I know what they were doing. When you watch something, I guess they found a hard pan spot right there in that giant arena. There's always some things to make it better. They are paying attention to their ground and they want to get it right. And I think that's a move in the right direction instead of it is what it is, learn how to ride on it. I don't believe in that. I know for a fact that some of our people were on the phone with Cheyenne and that there was efforts to make sure that that was corrected. So, I agree that it's never good when a horse goes down, but you can watch, I watch it at ours. You can watch, the real pros. Here's the deal. When I see some of the really, really aces, the jockeys have trouble, right? Especially after a run or two and they know what they're dealing with, then I'm like, shame on, right? Otherwise it needs to be fixed. So that's my little 2 cents on that.
There was one day when it, the wheels really fell off when, everything fell to pieces. And then the first person after the drag was Brittany Posey Tanazi, multiple time world champion. And she said no. And the judges, to their credit, said, okay. And they stopped it. And then they gave everybody the option, just so everybody knows, if you'd already run, you had the option of running the next morning at 8 a.m., I think it was. And the people who hadn't run yet had the option of running the next morning. I don't know how many people chose that. I know the horses that fell, I feel like they were sore and they didn't do it, kind of like Tim O'Connell didn't take his reride because he wanted to make sure he didn't have a broken back before, which was really wise in the heat of the moment. But, anyway, again, neither one of us was there. I would, because I think one of the harsh criticisms I would love, neither of us is here to attack specific rodeos or specific people, but I think one of those big ticket items with my cowboy friends there, and I would love, for you to address it from your point of view, producing a rodeo. Let's talk about top loading payoffs, because one of the big criticisms that people said to me was, I'm not going to, a lot of the bullers didn't go, and they said, I'm not going to run one over a score like that for, was it $2,000 or $3,000? So let's talk just in general about top loading payoffs and your feeling about that.
Well, So you want your rodeo to have an impact, right? And so the people that win your rodeos, you want them to be able to have significant improvement in the standings. I think it's a balancing act, Kendra. I think in a situation with in the case of particularly maybe Cheyenne or Salinas dribbling it down, I'm still ingrained, and maybe it's the old man in me, that you just don't give blue ribbons 40 feet down, right? If you give every kid on the Pee Wee team a blue ribbon and tell them they do good,
let me just
that they're not
interrupt
going to
for a
get
moment.
better.
Let me interrupt you for a moment, because I saw the 3 feet tall trophies you gave to every mutton buster in Salt Lake City, Skip.
That's not the analogy I'm making. I'm just saying that that sometimes not winning makes you better. Sometimes not winning makes you go home, and maybe you need to go home. Listen, there's probably a good argument both ways, spreading the money out and top loading it. And I'm an advocate of impactful prize money, right? I'm not an advocate of taking $70,000 and dividing it up 700 ways. Now, in particular at our rodeo, we shoved some more money into those earlier rounds intentionally when we added more money, but I kept my base money up there where I wanted it, right? The top three, and we pay all eight. If you come into ours, all eight get a check. So you're going to get a check when you come into our rodeo. And with the exception of ground money, some different ground money rules.
Okay, and I would love to interrupt to say that the 3 medalists, so people know, gold medal came with 18 grand, a silver medal came with 13 grand, and a bronze medal came with 8 grand. That's very impressive.
Well, but it's not, we in the short go, we paid 8 holes down. I'm just saying, I do understand. I understand your point of view, and I understand the committees. I don't think that I have a magic bullet for this. I think that if there's more people playing and the conditions are harder, I think in a progressive where you're limiting it, I think there's probably an argument for top loading, because that's the best against the best. I think if you open that up more, that you should give more people opportunities to win money, because it's harder to get there, in that particular environment. So I don't have a great stance on this. I see the reason for top loading it. I see you want your prize money to be impactful, right? And you could admit that. You want to see that someone wins your rodeo, it significantly helps them in the standings. I appreciate that. I appreciate the people that when, are sitting, I appreciate what you're saying. You're sitting 8th hole and you barely cover your fuel and getting there. I appreciate that too. And I don't know that I have a really good argument for either. I see both sides of the story.
So let's just keep the conversation open. Let's move on to another thing that I thought was interesting. Let's talk about buck order and roughstock, because you explain who decides, and you explain to me how the deck is not stacked in certain favors to sell the performance. Explain that.
Okay. Well, so yes, stock contractors, in our case, in our rodeo. So there's a couple things that you have to understand from a production standpoint. Our goals, we can't lose sight of the fact that the people in the stands, literally, the people that buy the tickets, are what brings the tide into the bay that lifts all ships. Because sponsors don't come if there's not fans. We've had this conversation. So you need to package this so that the fans have the best experience while balancing competition. So in the case when I was doing the PBR and with our rodeo, it's really simple. We really buck them. We try to buck them primarily in the right order that they're loaded, primarily, not exclusively. And you do want to, there's nothing wrong with putting really good matchups. I don't think there's any wrong with it at the end. Now, an athlete's side is going to be, well, the first guy never wins. Well, that has nothing to do, Kendra, with us as producers or stock contractors or show. You know what that is? That's bad judging. Because the way I look at it, the first guy should have, if the judges are tuned in and they know what they're doing, there's no reason that the first guy is setting some kind of bar for the rest of the performance. That's just amateur judging, frankly. And we're professionals, and I have to assume that the 4 judges I have there will give the first guy what he deserves and he should win. Right? And
okay, let's take a specific example. We're in Utah. Correct me if I'm wrong. We're in Utah. Was it intentional that Ryder and Settler Ride went last in one perf?
I'm sure there was discussions on they would be the right guys to end the round in.
The
But
right
so what?
guys?
Well,
Okay,
I mean,
okay.
they're the blue shirts and you're in Utah, but what difference does that make
Hey,
if the
listen,
judging's
listen.
correct?
Okay, fair. That is absolutely true. And I'm a fan of the blue shirts. So don't look at me like that. But I'm just saying in general, if you're in Utah, and also there's a lot all the time online about, I didn't know so and so announcer was also a judge or whatever. How much pressure is there on the announcers to again sell? How much does the announcer want? And I'm not talking about Salt Lake City here. I'm talking about another rodeo that happened in the last week that's just getting pummeled over this. How much pressure is there on the announcer to in turn pressure the judges to sell it and have the last guy or two knock it out of the park with the crowd?
No, I don't think any. So from an announcer's perspective, and these announcers can send us some feedback if they want, their job is to take every diamond in the field, right, and make sure that it's recognized, right, to sell everything you have to sell. Their job is also to take the underdogs and set up the story, and along with the music, right, that this underdog could win. Now, when you have the rights at the end, right, and you've got 10,000 people in the stands, that when you say a right's name, they're going to lose their cookies. Yeah, they're going to take advantage of it. That's what they're paid to do. They're paid to take advantage, and it makes them look good, right? If the announcer's standing there and he drops a line and the crowd goes wild, I look over at my guys and wink at them. Good job. That's their job. Now, again, I go back to the same thing, that the right guy should win. That's the competition. By the way, that's what the PRCA should be focusing on, is that the right guys get to the NFR and the right guy gets a good buckle. And you know what that's directly tied to? That's directly tied to the judging. Like, it's directly tied. Like, there's no room, zero room in our sport for non-qualified judges. Bring it on. Anybody, bring on your comments. Bring on everything.
Yeah.
There's no room for that.
Anybody can go against you, but the 2 words I would have for you that just kind of cover it all for me are competitive integrity. And if you're not, if you have the 2 gunslingers last in front of their hometown crowd, if you're the 3rd guy out because you're saying the stock contractor is the stock contractor.
Well, there's all of us are in control of that. We can set the buck order however we want to set the buck order, and that's fine. And I will just respectfully disagree that by doing that, somehow you're changing the competitive advantage. Because again, I'm sorry, but if a rookie goes out first and he rides a 23 pointer and he sticks iron in his neck all the way, he should win. And that's a better story for the rodeo to come back and say the rookie beat the blue shirts at the first ride of the night. So I'm not going to travel down that road, because I think it's all a bunch of baloney if the judging's correct. Sorry. And this whole, the announcers blessed him and now he won. The announcers are judge. Oh, go home. Get good judges. The judges aren't listening to that, or if they are, they shouldn't be, right? Come on, get a grip. No, I respectfully disagree with you. Go out there and win. Now, the problem.
Yeah, but you're saying you respectfully disagree with me. I didn't throw my opinion out there. I
Yes, you
asked
did.
questions.
You
I
said,
asked
hold on.
questions. And
You didn't.
no,
You slyly said, don't you think it's a competitive advantage that those two guys from Salt Lake City go last? You might not have directly said it, but I know where you're going with this, and I just don't agree.
if my questions offend you, that's on you.
I'm not offended. We're debating. We're
Well,
debating it.
you might not be offended, but you're what's that word?
Defensive?
You're
Defensive?
defensive as hell.
I'm not. No. I'm
Why does it get your blood pressure up if my questions are so aligned?
Here's the deal. Because I think that everybody that nods their head should have. I guess I'm irritated with the fact that some of this stuff gets shadows on it because the judges don't do what the judges should do. Right.
Okay.
And I'm honestly not defensive. I mean, at the end of the day, as a producer, do I want to put someone out last that I know's not going to ride? No, I don't.
Okay. Here's another. Let's go one more example, and then I won't bring up any more examples here. Okay, there was a night in Salt Lake City where it was like, this is a dream. You got your 1-2 rookies and your 1-3 guys in the bull riding. Noah Lee and Hayden Welsh were out. They both bucked off, and then two guys, to tell you the truth, don't remember who they were. Is there anything done? Please enlighten me also to put more rideable bulls toward the end, because that really is the sell of your turf. No?
I don't think that was the case in our case. I think it was more chance in the way everything went down in corners and stuff. I'm not saying that other rodeos and stock contractors, when stock contractors are pushing the rodeos, that they don't load them with with more rideable bulls at the end. But at the end of the day, when you've got Noah Lee, you got these guys that you believe are going to ride. You can put them anywhere in a set of 8 bulls, or in, there was one day I think we had 6 bulls because we had a couple turnouts, which again, I don't understand how you turn out a rodeo that has 600 and something or 700 and something $1,000 added money. But, a visible injury, I get all this. It just, so to answer your question, I think there are rodeos that do that. I can't say that's a bad policy, because of course, Kendra, there's nothing better than your last bull rider rides. If you watch me on my podium, the last guy rides, I throw my hand up because it's exactly what I want for my crowd, because I'm fixing to turn the lights out. I want that to be their last memory. So I get it. The question is if it would be, I would need to be strongly considerate if I thought that it was, if what you said, is this a competitive advantage? Like, does this give someone an advantage? If it does, that's wrong, and that's on the judges. But mixing it up to be the best for the fans shouldn't be a problem, right? It shouldn't be a problem if we have professional judging. And I'm going to stay on that.
Not to, because it feels like the judging comes up all the time. And for the 10,000th time, I'm back to like how I feel about teachers. We need to pay qualified judges exponentially more money. That's the answer.
I agree.
For me,
I agree.
that's the answer. And so
we had a whole podcast on that. I agree.
There's
I
no
think
reason
these major rodeos with major prize money, and I think they're doing the best they can, but I'm sorry, I don't think it's good enough. I don't. I don't think there's any level of excuses when it comes to judging as far as association. I mean, I understand the realities of it, and I'm not saying any of these judges aren't trying their best, but their best may not be good enough. And that's a problem. And I still think it's a problem. I think it's something, people are worried about entering and we're going to change this and well, if you want to focus on something, you better make sure that the right guys are winning consistently across the boards, because there's so many other variables in our sport, Kendra. The draw, a shoot gate, all these things. You can't have the judges be a variable. It's just, let's move on. Let's move on.
You and I could go toe to toe all day. You, my friend, need to catch a plane. I would just you threw something out as opinion earlier, and I'll just finish with one. I have 18,000 tidbits up my sleeves from being out there at these radios here lately. But I thought it was really interesting. You said something about John Crimber's, the best bull rider in the world, and a lot of people feel that way. But interesting, when I asked Hayden Welsh, so just out of curiosity, who do you think's the best bull rider in the world right now? You know what he said? Sage Kimzey. I thought that was interesting. That's what Hayden Welsh thinks.
Well, there's
Speaking of people who do want to go where no man has gone before and pulled up short of Donegade's record when he surely would have gotten it, or still may at some point if he decides to go a different route. But I just thought that was really interesting. One of our brightest stars, his opinion is Sage Kimzey's the best.
Well,
I thought that was interesting.
Well, but Sage is, so it depends on what you're using for greatest bull rider in the world. Right? It's the same thing as greatest basketball player in the world. Is it MJ or LeBron? It's what are your qualifications for that? Those aren't written down. Now, is Sage Kimzey a mentor, a leader, a technically and fundamentally unbelievably great bull rider? Yes. Has he not, with gold buckles, proven how great he is? And Crimber hasn't yet. For me, it's laying two guys side by side in the moment. Young Crimber with the reaction time that's unbelievable, with a whole list of injuries that Sage doesn't have on his bedpost, right? You put those two guys together now on the same bull. That's a tricky one too, because Sage's experience comes in. But Crimber's he's got the youth, he's got the passion, he's got the drive, right? And Sage has got the experience and a lot of injuries and a little age on him. In the moment, Crimber, this is my opinion, Crimber is the best bull rider in the world, in my opinion, today. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think that Noah can't outride him one night anywhere. That's not it. I'm just from my perspective.
Noah, you know what? That was really interesting too, because Noah and Hayden are such headliners right now, and rightly so. And Noah got the shit beat out of him in Salt Lake City and turned right around and went and kicked ass at Cheyenne the next day with a broken nose. So
he did.
Don't think he's not a tough little son of a bitch.
And you can see the wear on these guys. You can see the wear on Crimber. This getting on every day, right, and traveling is a different game, right? It's a different game. And that's why I said heads up, Crimber, because he's learning some stuff that he's going to take into the PBR teams that's going to give him an edge, which, by the way, Sage brought in there, right? These are things that are undeniable advantages. Go get in a rodeo truck, go down the road, draw bulls. Crimber, he's drawing into pins. That's a whole different game for him. When they draw into a pin at the PBR bulls, there might be one that only he can ride, right? But you're not drawing some no good rotten. I mean, we had a couple bulls in our outs that I was like, yuck. Now that wasn't their trips, but yuck. They don't belong in this pin. Now that wasn't their trips. And in fairness, the bull riders looked at all of them, and, we get contestants input on all the stock. We have 5 different stock contractors. We have Pete Carr there. Pete Carr could inevitably do our rodeo with all his stuff. A lot of his stuff set, right? Because I want the best of everybody's. So back to Crimber, I'm with you. I mean, I would think that if I had to say, who should you look up to today, Hayden? Sage. Absolutely. Who should you pattern yourself after? Sage. Absolutely. who's going to ride the same bull in and out with all the things the same today? Crimber is going to probably ride something that Sage may not. That's my opinion.
Here's what I'm going to do as your friend, my red-faced friend.
Am I red-faced?
We both need to live to fight another day, and that starts with you catching this plane and not missing it. So
I'm good. I'm good. I want to, there's a couple other little things that I think are really, that I thought were really interesting. So did you see on social media, the skydiver coming in with the American flag at Folsom, Colorado, and then coming to an abrupt stop?
Folsom, Colorado, or
Folsom,
California? No,
California.
I did not see it, but no.
Yeah, I saw the video on it. Oh my goodness, because we've done skydiving at our deal. It's so cool when it comes in. But if you haven't seen that on social, it's alarming at first because it's da da da, and they have this final approach where the flag's coming in, and everybody's getting ready to scream when they hit the dirt. And I mean, and a very abrupt stop. And I found out from Reno that the guy is completely fine, by the way, everybody, thanks to the Coors pop-up tent. So he evidently, when he hit the clothesline wire or whatever, he basically cantilevered down 100 miles an hour and hit a pop-up tent and is okay. So he's okay. So if you saw that guy's okay. I thought that was, and it's interesting because I almost messed up. We brought Skycam into Salt Lake City, and we always traditionally have skydivers. And it was about a month out that I'm like, oh, I can't have skydivers and have Skycam in. And by the way, Stephen Wharton and the Skycam crew, that Skycam is amazing to help viewers see the breadth and everything. Skycam is really, really cool. The last thing that I wanted to bring up, lighthearted, but I wanted to get your opinion and tell people if they saw it. So did you hear in Reno the name of the bull that got all the attention because it was a racial slur? Did you hear about that? Well, yes. I just had to dig into that because I'm like, what? So Anthony's my brother's announcing it. So I texted him, I said, were you the guy that announced the name of the bull? And he said, yes. And so here I just went, because I think this is interesting because I dug into it a little bit. The bull's name was Nick Gertz, Nick, capital Gerts. Now, if you're sitting and listening to the podcast or you're watching us, try saying that really fast 5 times. And if you don't have an S on it, then you get what the racial slur is. Because I was trying to figure out what it was, right? How is it a racial slur? But maybe I'm a little slow. And so I see how it happened. And they changed the name and of the bull. But boy, again, you got to be careful because you don't want to upset anybody. Anybody's perception is reality. And, so that's where that came from. I thought it was, cause I'm like, what was, cause I read the name Nick Gertz. I'm like, I don't get it. What, until I got a little perspective. And if you say that, if you're an announcer and you say it really fast and maybe you don't stress the S, you can see where that's coming from. Kind of like the old joke where you called the bar and asked for, I'm not even going to bring those names up. And they announced over the loudspeaker, could so-and-so and so-and-so come to the bar? And if it's said real fast. So that's where all that was. And I think let's end a very interesting conversation on a lighthearted note. Nobody was intended to be offended there. And the name was changed, by the way. So there you have it.
On that, you know what? Sorry, but we're going to just keep having one more. But on the perceptionist reality, point, that was always true. And right now I have a real heart for our friends at Salinas who just had a whale of a rodeo. Amazing, awesome. We talked about some of the reasons why. And then right now they're going through torture because a non-PRCA rodeo over the weekend or event related to rodeo happened, and they're getting pummeled over an animal welfare issue that has nothing to do with professional rodeo, and it's really tough. But this is the tap dance that we're all playing in 2026 because of so many sensitivities in society that weren't there
Well,
30 or 40 years
it's
ago.
interesting that you brought that up. See, we're just one on here. We'll go longer than we should. But I reached out to Reno. By the way, Reno Rosser and Flying Your Rodeo, they're at the forefront of this battle, right? That is waging on the West Coast on rodeo. And hats off to Reno and a lot of others. The PRCA is involved. A lot of people that are involved in this. And I said, "What's up with the ban on rodeo in LA?" And he said, "It's dead. It didn't go through. That the council member that was advocating it, um, that may not still be on the council." But you bring up a really good point. Professional rodeo and the WPRA, they can't control or monitor all of this other stuff that's out there, which could potentially be fatal for our sport. And I'm with you. I mean, the amount of effort that Salinas puts in any West Coast rodeo, the amount of effort that they have to put in to make sure that they don't get pummeled is unbelievable, that there's still a rodeo on the West Coast, right? Because it's almost, why do it, right? Like, why even, it's not even worth the headache. But thank God and hats off to you guys for because that's where it all originated. You bring it up all the time. There's the West Coast is, part of the foundation of our sport, and it's got to stay there. But you bring up a valid point, and I don't, what do we do? But say, but you also have to pay attention to even some of these pro rodeos, how they handle these situations is important. And
Well, and all the ball bounces both directions, by the way, because Reno being on the forefront and a guy like Tim Baldwin from Salinas being on the front lines and different people, let's not forget that a year or two ago when it all came down on the rodeo ban in LA, who saved the day? The Charros.
Yep. I saw the
And
picture
so,
of 70 Charros on horseback, right?
yes,
Standing in front of City Hall or whatever. And
yes. And their
fantastic.
cultural influence helped the cowboy culture tremendously. So we don't want to turn on related events, but the harpoon goes in both directions, right? The dagger comes in both directions, but they have so helped save the day. So we don't want to just turn on each other. We want to help each other. Again, we're back to rising that tide.
Yeah. And
ships.
the thing about it is and it's not wise, you have animal athletes performing and you have human athletes performing, just like all athletes perform, and injuries can happen. That's just the reality of performing athletes. Now, the argument is, I'm telling you, I've had PETA people come with me to behind the chutes and watch these bucking horses and bulls, and you watch the natural instinct of the cattle and everything. It all goes back to the premise of forcing something for entertainment. And I just don't I don't think that that's the case. These animals, especially the rough stock, the born to buck is real. They love what they do. And, to sit there and say that that's not possible for an animal to be injured while it is competing, and they're competing against the human, and they want to win. And, we have to take precautions. And I know that as a whole, the rodeo industry takes, you look at like Brittany not running, right? You can give example of our industry cherishing our animals and taking care of them. But the perception, you said it, we said it both, perception's reality. It matters how someone perceives it, whether it's true or not, right? Even in your home and your family, how you talk to somebody, it matters how that person you're talking to is perceiving it.
Yes.
Whether you meant it or not.
If people know the truth, one of my favorite examples of the way we feel about our animals with a gold buckle on the line, Haley Kinsel leave sister in her stall last year for the 10th round because she was just not quite herself that morning. I mean, come on now. Nobody loves them more than we do. So
that's great.
Go catch your plane.
Okay. Well, everybody, thank you for being a part. Boy, it was fun to be back. It was fun for us to just have a conversation. Thank all of you. We'll be back. We're coming at you every 2 weeks. So get ready. We're coming at you every 2 weeks. And you're going to hear us whether you like it or not. So to all of you, God bless you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Miss Santos. Again, you're a star. This has been No Spin Rodeo, episode 108. We'll see you next time.